Ethan stared out the dormitory window, where spindly branches swayed in the late autumn wind. The cold seeped through the glass, sending a shiver down his spine. He didn't think much of the chill. What truly made him uneasy were the stories he had just heard from a classmate, ancient legends about an abandoned church deep in the forests of New England. The villages surrounding the small town each had their own tales, but the story of this church was different. It began in the 19th century, when a sudden fire broke out during a service, consuming most of the building. No one knew the exact cause, and the most terrifying part wasn't the fire itself, but what came afterward. Locals whispered about a choir echoing on moonless nights, a sound emerging from nowhere, as if the voices of the church still lingered among the ashes. Clara, sitting beside Ethan, glanced at him, a mixture of curiosity and worry in her eyes. "You're really planning to go see it?" she asked softly, as if afraid someone might hear. Ethan smirked, eyes alight with curiosity. "I've been researching it for a week.
You can hide from me?
Old churches always leave behind unique cultural and musical traces. If anything truly strange exists, this is a good opportunity to witness it firsthand." Marcus patted Ethan on the shoulder, laughing. "Just observe, don't become part of the legend. I heard that if anyone goes alone, they might disappear forever." Lena, who usually believed in the supernatural more than anyone, sighed. "I don't know, but it sounds creepy. Are you really planning to go tonight?" Ethan nodded. "Exactly. At night, everything comes alive." Clara frowned, an uneasy feeling creeping over her. She was always sensitive to sound, and the thought of voices echoing from the darkness, from the charred walls, made her heart race. But for Ethan, curiosity outweighed fear. He imagined the ruined church, cracked bricks, blackened arches, and statues burnt to ghostly silhouettes. In his mind, it was both horrifying and alluring, like an ancient secret waiting to be discovered. Before darkness fully fell, the friends gathered to discuss their route, lighting equipment, and safety measures. Yet any preparation seemed small compared to what awaited them in the dark New England forest, where the singing could erupt at any moment, calling the living closer and never letting them go. Ethan hoisted his backpack, excitement thrumming in his chest. He had no idea that even as he stepped out of the dorm, what awaited the group was not merely folklore, but a living entity. A silent choir whose voices could shake the mind of anyone alive. The New England sky darkened rapidly, clouds thickly veiling the moon. The four friends stepped onto a trail leading deep into the forest, faint light spilling from flashlights and handheld lanterns. Each step sank into dry leaves and damp soil, producing eerie sounds in the stillness. Ethan led the way, guided by an old map he had obtained from the local library. Clara walked close beside him, eyes scanning the towering trees, hands gripping her flashlight. Marcus occasionally joked to lighten the tense atmosphere, while Lena sighed, wide-eyed as if afraid something might leap from the shadows. The path narrowed, flanked by tall trees whose gnarled branches stretched like hollow hands, knocking together in the wind. The damp scent of the ancient forest mingled with the faint smell of charred wood left from the fire decades ago. Ethan sensed something unusual. The deeper they went, the stranger the silence became, leaving only the sound of their footsteps and, occasionally, the rustle of leaves whispering. "Have we actually seen the church yet?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. "Almost," Ethan replied calmly, though his heart raced. "I saw it on the map, just around the next bend." And then, from the depths ahead, a faint sound began to reach their ears, like singing, far away, weak, each note flickering in and out. The friends froze, flashlights trembling in their hands. "Do you hear that?" Lena whispered, voice shaking. Marcus raised an eyebrow, feigning bravery. "Sounds like someone singing in the bushes, or a ghost singing." He laughed, but the smile faded as the singing grew clearer, sweet yet horrifying, like a faint hymn from a bygone century. Clara felt a strange vibration in her ears, as if the song were calling her name. She turned to Ethan, eyes wide. "Do you hear it? It's targeting me." Ethan said nothing, but he knew the sound was not an illusion. It had order, rhythm, and a strange, hypnotic power. They continued forward, their steps lighter, drawn toward the source. The church's remnants came into view under the flashlights, the collapsed roof, blackened walls, shattered stained glass, and statues burned halfway. The air was dense, as if every living thing held its breath to hear the invisible choir. The singing grew louder, echoing through the ashen walls and mingling with the wind through the cracks. Marcus began to feel uneasy. Lena shivered, and Clara seemed entranced, her eyes wide, the whites stark in the darkness. Ethan moved forward, sensing that something extraordinary awaited inside. Not just legend, but a reality that existed, waiting for the curious to enter. And in that moment, as the friends stood before the cracked wooden door of the church, they didn't know that their next step would lead them into a terrifying realm, long unspoken of, where the voices no longer belonged to the living. The friends pushed open the old door. The hinges screeched like a sigh. Inside, darkness swallowed every step, only weak flashlight beams casting uneven light on the charred walls. The smell of smoke and mold enveloped them, forcing them to hold their breath as they stepped further in. The faint singing they had heard in the forest now echoed clearly, seemingly coming from all directions at once. Slow, melodious, yet chilling. It seeped into every corner of their minds. Clara froze, gripping her flashlight tightly, heart racing. The voice was soft, but enchanting, as if each note were calling her by name. Ethan advanced, observing. He realized the sound had a definite structure, not random, like an ancient hymn long lost. Flashlight beams revealed burnt and cracked walls, collapsed arches hovering, and a large empty space at the end where the singing was loudest. Marcus scoffed, attempting to break the tension. Probably just the old church corpses. Singing, he joked, but his laugh faltered as a prolonged note resonated just behind him. Lena grabbed Clara's hand, pale-faced. "I don't know. Should we turn back?" But Ethan shook his head resolutely. "We came this far. We have to see it through. There's something we need to witness." Clara followed, feeling drawn toward the sound. The singing penetrated her mind, gentle yet eerie, making her want to step forward and join the invisible choir. She shivered, almost hypnotized, only breaking away when Lena shook her shoulder. The singing didn't just fill the space, it vibrated in the bones, as if the entire church breathed in rhythm. Ethan sensed a strange presence, not a malevolent ghost, but something sacred, ancient, existing between life and death. They stopped in the nave, where rows of old pews sat neatly. For the first time, they saw faint movements in the shadows. The singing continued, drawing them deeper into the church, where the boundary between life and death grew thin. In a brief moment of silence, they realized this was no longer a story or a legend. They were facing a horrifying reality. The music led the way, and if one wasn't careful, they might never leave. The friends moved into the church's nave, where flashlight beams barely lit the cracked tile floor. The singing grew clearer, wrapping around them, making the air dense and almost alive. Ethan crouched to examine the pews, and what he first noticed froze him. The figures seated upright were not living. Marcus stammered, wait, those are mummies?" Before them, desiccated corpses sat in rows, mouths open as if singing. Their skin was dry, hair tangled, eyes hollow, yet the sound emanating from their mouths continued a centuries-old hymn, pure yet terrifying. Not an echo or simulation, but a living sound, rhythmic and pitched, though the bodies were stiff and lifeless. Clara trembled, staring at a corpse directly ahead, feeling as if its song called her personally. Lena stepped back, clutching Ethan's arm. "Don't look too long. I feel like it wants to pull me in." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to analyze. The air wasn't hostile. The singing bore no malice, no harshness, no growls. Instead, it was sacred, like an ancient ritual, as if these souls continued their final mission, singing the hymn even after leaving life behind. Marcus, usually joking, stepped closer, eyes wide with awe and fear. "I can't believe they're really singing." He shivered, unable to look away. Clara felt a strange vibration coursing through her body. The voice entered her mind, sweet and hypnotic, making her want to speak, to join in. Ethan quickly grabbed her hand, pulling her back. "We have to stay alert, Clara. Don't let the music deceive us." The singing continued, but now it was no longer a distant legend. It existed, calling, drawing them to the edge between life and death. The friends stood frozen, terrified and amazed, realizing that every folktale they had heard was just the tip of the iceberg. Ethan swept his flashlight across the mummified faces, mouths open, producing the mesmerizing sound. He knew that if anyone wasn't careful, they might never leave, and that the singing wasn't just a song, but an invitation, reaching out toward every step they took in the darkness. Ow! The singing surrounded them, each note seeming to seep into the friends' very veins. Ethan stood still, trying to analyze the sound, and finally realized this was not random music. It was an ancient hymn, long lost, once sung in the church before the fire. Each note, each chord had a purpose, as if weaving an invisible net to pull the living inside. Clara stepped slowly toward the mummified corpses, eyes wide, almost hypnotized. The singing penetrated her mind, gentle yet insistent, softly coaxing. She felt invited, as if the music were speaking to her. "Join us, sing with us." Lena grasped Clara's hand, trying to pull her back from the trance, voice trembling. "Clara, come back, don't listen to them." Marcus, however, was curious, stepping closer. "See, can we try touching it? Just a little?" He laughed nervously, but the smile quickly died when the singing surged louder, as if reacting to his curiosity. Ethan sensed a strange energy filling the room. He pulled Clara away, emphasizing, "This music isn't just for scare tactics. It wants to invite the living to join. And once you join, there's no turning back." Clara shivered, struggling against the hypnotic pull. "Ethan, are you sure we won't Get pulled in. We have to get out before it's too late. Ethan's eyes scanned the room, serious. He knew that if they weren't careful, even a single hesitation could allow the mummified choir to claim one of them as the next member of the silent choir. The singing now pulsed rhythmically, blending with their breaths, making Clara feel as if each step was drawing her into the center of the nave. Lena held her back in time, while Ethan swept his flashlight around, searching for an escape. Marcus, despite the warning, edged closer, curiosity overpowering caution. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. He knew if Marcus didn't stop, something terrible would happen. The singing continued, no longer harmless. Every note was an invitation, gentle yet irresistibly powerful. The friends realized that the line between life and death now lay in the hymn itself. Ethan took a deep breath, grasped Clara's hand tightly, and silently vowed. They had to choose, escape or be drawn into the music. The friends stood in the vast nave, flashlight beams trembling across charred walls and rows of old pews. The singing filled the space, long, soft, and eerie. Clara almost froze, eyes wide, lips slightly parted, as if ready to sing. Ethan quickly grabbed her hand, voice urgent. Clara, no, this isn't ordinary music. It's trying to pull you in. But Clara shivered, her hand loosening from Ethan's grip, hypnotized by the sound. A vibration ran deep into her bones, compelling her to step toward the mummies seated in rows, to join their song. I want to sing, she whispered, barely controlling herself. Lena shook her, voice trembling. Clara, listen to me. Step back. If you start singing, you won't escape. Marcus, on the other hand, was consumed by curiosity. He stepped closer to the pews, eyes bright, touching a mummified figure. A louder note rang out, seemingly responding to his curiosity. He hesitated briefly, but too late. A force pulled him toward the center of the choir, the flashlight wobbling violently. Ethan shouted and lunged to grab Marcus, but his hand passed through empty air. Marcus had vanished, drawn into the heart of the music. The remaining friends stared in horror at the spot he had just occupied, leaving only empty pews and the still singing hymn, sweet and terrifying. Clara gasped, panicked. Marcus! Marcus! She clutched Ethan's hand, struggling against the song's pull. Ethan pulled her from the center, glancing back at the mummified choir. The music still echoed, calling the remaining steps. He whispered, "We have to get out. Now." The friends bolted for the main doors, hearts pounding, footsteps unsteady on the cracked tiles. Darkness and music seemed to grasp at them, but Ethan's determination and Lena's composure were enough to help Clara break free from the trance. Once outside, the cold night air enveloped them like a saving cloak. Yet even as they distanced themselves from the church, the hymn lingered in Ethan's mind, a reminder that one member had been left behind, and that a new silent choir had begun to form. Shy. The next morning, weak sunlight filtered through the forest canopy as the friends returned to the church, hoping to find Marcus and explain what had happened. But as they entered the nave, the sight froze them in place. The old pews remained neatly aligned, the mummified corpses still seated, mouths open as if humming a hymn. But this time, there was a new member. In the center, where Marcus had once stood, a fresh mummy had appeared, stiff and lifeless, mouth parted as if ready to sing. Marcus was gone, replaced by the cold, silent form. Clara grasped Ethan's hand tightly, heart racing. "No, it can't be," she whispered, eyes wide. Ethan stepped closer, tension and regret in his gaze. "We didn't make it in time." He surveyed the nave, realizing that the choir was not merely a legend, but a living entity, always expanding, inviting the curious. Lena was pale, clutching Ethan's sleeve. We have to go," she said, voice trembling. The friends silently left the church, each step heavy with loss. Even in the daylight, they could still faintly hear the hymn, soft yet eerie, seeping into their minds. Ethan sensed it clearly. Even if they left the place, a part of the music followed them, a reminder that the silent choir never truly ended. It was still waiting, still growing, and anyone curious enough would become the next member. The friends walked silently toward the path leading out of the forest, carrying lingering fear and an unspoken question. Was Marcus truly gone, or had he fully merged into the eternal hymn of the silent choir? From afar, in the charred remains of the church, the haunting voices continued endlessly, beckoning new footsteps.